We all want to feel like we're growing, like we're moving forward, like we're getting traction in life and going in a direction that we want. And when we don't feel like that, it's frustrating. We feel stagnant. We don't feel like we're on track. Maybe it's that we've got a challenge. We keep falling into the same arguments with the same person. Or maybe it's a habit that just keeps coming up. I keep getting behind the wheel and being as impatient as ever. Or I feel like, I'm showing up for meetings and I'm prepping at the last minute, which means in every meeting I'm stressed. So if I'm not stressed, I'm not performing at my best. None of us want to feel like that sense of being stuck and not going forward. So what do? Let's look at 3 ways that you can address this. First, one of the number one reasons why people stay stuck is they don't upgrade their identity. And what do I mean by that? We tend to have a sense of our identity. And for most of us, we don't tend to update it. We don't tend to stay current with it. And so as a result, we see ourselves like we were in the past. We haven't updated our identity since high school or maybe college. And so we still see ourselves as that awkward person, that person with the braces, or person stumbling around. Who knows what we were doing? And that sense of that person who was perhaps covering up feelings of inadequacy. And if we haven't kept our identity updated, then it's no wonder maybe we're not moving forward personally or moving forward getting promoted. Didn't get the promotion last year. Maybe this is why. If we don't see it in ourselves, how are other people going to see it? Because certainly we are not who we were then. We are wiser because we've seen more. We are stronger because we've been through more hard things and we're still here. And if we haven't kept current, then again, how are other people going to see it? We're not seeing it. So I highly recommend that we think about our skills. What are our current skills now? You sit down and make a list. Current skills, top skills, accomplishments. What are my top accomplishments in the last time period since I've last done this? What are my top strengths? And if I get current with myself, it's much more likely as I update my own sense of my identity, other people will see it too. And I'm well on my way to getting unstuck. Second, we all want to grow. And to grow and improve in our lives, we need to change. So why do we get stuck? Why do we feel like we're not changing? Well, here's the thing. We actually are. We're just not seeing it. We're not owning it. There's a really cool principle, comes from the field of education, that explains this. When somebody learns something, in education, when a student learns something, you don't want to have them learn 100 things at once because 100 things in means nothing comes out. It's too much. It's the overload. But if you take the individual, and we're just going to say the individual starts with the letter I. So we've got the I standing for individual, and then you just add one thing. It's called the I plus one principle. So the I, the individual, you just add one thing, one learning, and what happens is once they're able to assimilate that, because it's only one thing, it's not 100 things, it becomes part of them. It becomes part of what they know, and it becomes part of who they are. And that I has now just become bigger, knows more, is more substantial. And this happens with us all the time. You learn a new software program, you learn a new stress management technique, you learn a new exercise to strengthen your sore back. Those are all examples of learning. And once you learn that thing, your I plus one, you added one, now the I is bigger, the I is stronger. So owning it is a big part of realizing, you know what? I am not as stuck as I thought I was, and I'm growing in these ways. And once you get that confidence, that can empower you, open your mind to see other areas that you might want to tackle that could help you grow and help you get unstuck. Third, if you feel stuck, it's very possible you haven't done the work of integration. Let's say you think, I realize I haven't updated my identity since high school. I still sort of think like I'm that same person and maybe kind of act like that same person. Or let's say you realize I am so impatient when I get behind the wheel of a car. That's not necessarily the safest thing. Or you realize that you show up for meetings always prepping at the last minute, which means you're always stressed in your meetings. So you've done these things. So what do you do about it? How do you get unstuck and how do you really move forward? Well, you've got to do the work of integration. Number one, in terms of integration, you've got to put a plan in place. Like you realize, all right, well, I'm impatient behind the road. I got to start blocking out 5 minutes extra to leave before I get on the road, just to put in a little bit of cushion time, 10 minutes, whatever it is, to give yourself some time so when someone cuts you off or some of that bad driving behavior out there comes across your path, you don't get so impatient. And if it's the fact that you're showing up for meetings and just doing your prep last minute, you make a rule for yourself. I'm going to prep for my meetings by the end of the day before. I'm not going to finish work until I've prepped for that meeting the next day, and block out a little time for that. Give yourself a plan for these things. So that's first for integration. But the second part is you've got to tell yourself and remind yourself how you're growing in that. Or you've got to tell yourself and remind yourself you're not the same person that you were in high school. So what does that mean? That means doing some journaling. That means putting up some post-it notes. That means setting some automatic reminders for yourself. And you've got to do it regularly. You've got to do it daily, because we do tend to get stuck in those old self-concepts. So if you put a plan together and you actually take this action to integrate this new behavior that you want into your life, but don't stop there. You've also got to update your identity that, yes, that is who you are. That is who you are becoming, that new you. Do those two things and you're going to get yourself unstuck. If you want to get unstuck, it takes work. It takes work in terms of, first, your identity, updating your identity. You're not the same person that you were in the past, and getting your self-concept into the current phase of your life. Look at your strengths. Look at your wisdom. All those things that you've gathered along the way since you were a kid, you're much more able and capable to get yourself unstuck now. Second, the I+1 principle is such a helpful one to remember, that you have been adding +1, +1, +1 learnings to your identity all along. So whatever you need, you've probably got it. At least you've got the resource to go and find it. And third, it's to do the work of integration and really practice these new elements of you, and then remind yourself of who you are in your current phase. You do these and you are on the road to getting unstuck.